The monastery at dawn. I heard about this place from a Romanian friend of mine. Someone who grew up in the countryside near the Carpathian Mountains. If you don't know that part of the world, just picture endless forests, deep valleys where fog rolls like it's alive, and old stone villages that feel like they haven't changed in centuries. It's one of those places where, even if you're standing in the middle of a modern road with cars passing by, you still feel like the past is breathing down your neck. And out there, tucked into the lower slopes of the Carpathians, there's this ruined monastery. Locals don't give you the name. They'll just say, the one near the ridge, the one with the broken bell tower. You ask for more details, they shrug, like the less you know, the safer you are. But if you ask too much, they'll tell you a story, and the story always starts the same way. Don't go there before sunrise. The monastery itself was built centuries ago, back when this region was on the edge of wars, invasions, religious disputes. All that stuff Europeans had going on long before America even existed. They say monks lived there for hundreds of years, and then one winter the whole place burned. Nobody knows if it was soldiers, bandits, or maybe something darker. What's left today are stone walls without roofs, staircases leading to nowhere, and a bell tower that looks like it's ready to topple if you breathe too hard near it. Tourists sometimes stumble onto it while hiking. Romania has a lot of old ruins like castles and churches, so people think it's just another photo op. But this one is different. The air around it feels heavier. Birds don't perch on the stones. The grass inside the walls grows in strange patterns, like rings scorched into the ground. The part everyone remembers is the bell. Imagine you're walking at night, early enough that the sky is still dark blue, just before the sun breaks. The woods are quiet. Maybe you hear a stream. Maybe your boots crunch on gravel. And then, clear as day, you hear a church bell. Slow, heavy, echoing across the valley. But no one's around to ring it. My friend said he heard it once when he was a teenager. He and a group of buddies had dared each other to climb up near the ruins before dawn. They thought it was just a ghost story, something the adults made up to keep kids from sneaking out at night. They crept through the forest, laughing and trying to act tough, and when they got close enough to see the broken silhouette of the monastery against the mountains, the bell rang. 1, 2, 3 times. The sound rolled down into their stomachs like thunder, and that's when they saw the monks. Not monks like you'd see in a movie with brown robes and sandals. These were tall, covered in long black habits that brushed the ground. They stood in 2 perfect lines, inside the ruined chapel, hands folded, heads bowed. And even though the roof was gone, even though the walls were crumbling, the air shimmered like candlelight was bouncing off the stones. The boys froze. One of them whispered, "It's a service." But then they noticed something wrong. The monks weren't moving, not swaying, not breathing, not even shifting their weight, just frozen in place like statues. And then, all together, they started chanting. It wasn't Latin, though some people in the village think it's supposed to be. It wasn't Romanian either. It was this low, droning murmur, like the earth itself was humming through their throats. That's when my friend ran. Now, in America, you might think, oh cool, a haunted church, get a video, post it online. But over there, people don't play around. When my friend made it back to the village, the older folks didn't laugh. They didn't say, "Oh, you kids and your wild stories." They just nodded, serious, and they told him, "Don't ever step past the walls. Not when the monks are there. Because if you do, you won't make it more than a week. Not killed, not attacked, not dragged into the ground. Nothing dramatic like that. You'll just start to wither. People describe it like an invisible sickness. You stop eating. Your skin turns gray. Doctors can't explain it. And then, usually by the 7th day, you're gone. There are old records in the town hall, my friend swore he saw them, of travelers who went missing in the 1800s. A couple from Vienna, a merchant from Istanbul, even a priest from another parish. All had been last seen heading toward the monastery ruins. And then, nothing. Sometimes their bodies were found weeks later, lying in the forest, no wounds, no blood, just empty, like they'd been drained of life itself. One story, the one that really stuck with me, was about a photographer in the 1970s. He was visiting from Germany, hiking with expensive gear. Locals warned him, but of course he laughed it off. He wanted sunrise shots of the Carpathians, he said. He hiked out there before dawn. When he didn't come back, the police searched. They found his camera smashed against a stone. The photos developed later showed nothing but darkness, then faint streaks of light, then the inside of the monastery where you could just barely make out rows of black figures. He died 2 days later in the hospital. The doctors wrote down cardiac failure. But the nurses said he spent his last hours staring at the ceiling, whispering in some language no one recognized. People ask why the monks appear only before sunrise. Some say they're trapped in the moment of their death, reliving their final prayer before fire consumed them. Others say they're not the original monks at all, but something that borrowed their faces and habits to lure the living. There's even a local superstition that if you hear the bell, it means the monks have noticed you, like it's a warning. We see you. My friend hasn't been back since that night. He swears he'll never set foot near those ruins again. He told me, it's not a place for tourists. It's not even a place for us. And the crazy thing? He's not superstitious. He's the type who makes fun of ghost hunters and horror movies. But when he told me this, his hands shook. He said the chanting followed him for years, like sometimes he'd wake up in the middle of the night, and for a second, he'd hear that low hum outside his window. Now, you might wonder, is it real, or just another campfire tale? I'll tell you this much. Romania is full of castles and ruins where people spin vampire stories just to make a buck off tourists. But the locals, they don't use this monastery for tours, they don't sell t-shirts, they don't even mark it on maps, they just pretend it isn't there. And if you push too hard, if you ask for directions, they'll get angry. Because to them it's not entertainment, it's a wound. Something you leave alone. So, next time you're in that part of the world, hiking the Carpathians, maybe looking for Dracula's castle or whatever some travel blogger recommended, just remember, if you hear a bell ring before sunrise and there's no church for miles around, don't follow the sound. Don't go looking for a ruined monastery on the ridge. And if you do see black-robed monks praying inside broken walls, don't, under any circumstances, step past the threshold. Because in that place, dawn doesn't bring safety. It only shows you who was never meant to leave. The village of hanging ropes. There's this story I was told about a mountain village in Romania, hidden so far up in the hills that you'd never find it on a regular tourist map. It's the kind of place you only stumble into if you get lost, or if some local decides to take you there on purpose. No bus lines, no train stations, not even proper signs. Just dirt roads that twist until you're convinced you've been going in circles. The village looks ordinary enough during the day. Old wooden houses with steep roofs, smoke curling out of chimneys, chickens scratching in the dirt. You'd see kids chasing each other with sticks, old women shelling beans on their porches. Nothing scary at first. But when the sun goes down, that's when you notice it. The ropes. Every house, no matter how big or small, has a rope hanging from the beam above the front door. They're not tied to anything. No buckets, no laundry, nothing. Just ropes, dangling, swaying if there's a breeze. And when the sky goes black, the villagers all come outside, one by one, and start pulling them down, letting them swing loose. It looks like the whole village is decorated with nooses. When outsiders ask, "Why the ropes?" the villagers only give the same answer: because someone will come down. That's it. No explanation, no details. Just that. If you press them, they get uncomfortable. Their faces tighten, like they're not supposed to say more. A few of the older folks might cross themselves, whisper a prayer under their breath. The younger ones just shrug, like, "Don't ask. You wouldn't understand anyway." A friend of mine, let's call him Daniel, actually spent a night there. He's an adventurous type, the kind of guy who thinks hiking through Eastern Europe without a plan is a cool way to spend a summer. He found the village by accident, following an old shepherd trail that didn't show up on Google Maps. He said they were friendly enough when he arrived, shared food with him, gave him a place to sleep in a barn. But once night fell, he noticed everyone outside, adjusting those ropes, letting them hang just right. He thought it was some weird local tradition, like lighting candles or hanging lanterns. He asked a man in broken Romanian why they did it. The man smiled, showing a mouth of missing teeth, and said, "Because someone will come down." Daniel laughed, thinking it was just bad translation. Maybe he misunderstood. But then the man turned serious and added, "Don't look outside after midnight." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The barn smelled of hay and animals, and the floor was rough. Around midnight, curiosity got the better of him. He slipped out and peeked through a gap in the wooden boards. At first, he saw nothing. Just the ropes, swaying in the dark, catching a little bit of moonlight. The village was silent. Even the dogs weren't barking. And then, movement. The rope in front of the house, across the lane, jerked like someone had just grabbed it from above. It swung once, twice, and then it went taut. Daniel's eyes followed it upward, but he couldn't see where it ended. Just darkness. Then, slowly, something began to slide down. He swore it was a leg. Bare, pale, dangling like a puppet on a string. The foot brushed the ground, toes dragging in the dirt, and then another leg followed. Soon there was a whole figure hanging there, limp, as if asleep. The rope creaked under its weight. And Daniel realized every rope in the village was moving. One by one, shapes descended. Some small like children, some tall like grown men. They didn't walk. They didn't speak. They just swayed, their feet brushing the ground, but never quite standing on it. The villagers didn't scream, didn't run. They just stood at their doorways, watching with blank faces. Some even bowed their heads. Daniel said he wanted to run, but his body locked up. He couldn't stop staring. The figures were pale, washed out, like they'd been drained of color. He thought they looked wet, like they'd just climbed out of a river. At some point, one of the shapes turned toward him. Its face, or what should have been a face, was blurred, like fog pressed into human form. But he knew without a doubt it was looking right at him. That broke the spell. He stumbled back into the barn, slammed the door, and hid under the hay until morning. When the sun came up, the ropes were empty again. The villagers went about their chores like nothing had happened. Chickens scratching, kids laughing, smoke from chimneys. Daniel packed his bag and left. Nobody stopped him. But as he walked down the path, he passed an old woman who muttered something in Romanian. Later, when he asked a friend to translate, the words chilled him. Once you've seen them, they'll always know your face. There are theories, of course. Some say the ropes are invitations for the dead, family members, ancestors, like a way to let them visit for a night. Others say they're not ancestors at all, but something older, something the villagers bargained with centuries ago, and the ropes are a kind of offering. Whatever the truth is, Daniel never went back. He told me he still dreams of the figures swaying, their blurred faces turning toward him. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind is strong, he swears he hears the creak of ropes outside his apartment window. So, if you ever find yourself hiking in the Carpathians, and you come across a small village where every house has a rope hanging out front, don't ask too many questions. Don't stick around past midnight. And for God's sake, don't look to see who or what comes down. The girl in the photographs. There's a little town in Romania, not far from the border, where the mountains flatten into wide valleys. It's the kind of place tourists pass through without stopping. Stone houses, narrow streets, and an old square with a few shops that haven't changed in decades. Tucked into one corner of that square is a building with a faded sign. A photography studio. The studio has been there since before World War II. Back then, getting your portrait taken was a big deal. Families would put on their best clothes, stand stiff as statues, and the photographer would click one shot on a big wooden camera. Those prints stayed in family albums for generations. Even after modern cameras became common, the old studio never closed. Inside, the shelves are packed with photographs. Stacks of sepia portraits, black and white prints, glass negatives in dusty boxes. The walls are lined with frames showing soldiers in uniform, brides in lace dresses, children with solemn eyes. It feels like a museum of the town's history. But if you look closely, if you really study the photos, you notice something strange. In almost every single picture, somewhere near the edge of the frame, there's a girl. She isn't the subject. She's never centered. Sometimes you see just half her face at the corner. Sometimes a blurry figure in the background. Sometimes crouched behind a chair or standing near a window. Always the same girl. Long dark hair, a plain dress, maybe 10 or 12 years old. And the creepiest part? Nobody remembers posing with her. Ask the shop's current owner, an old man who inherited the place from his father, and he'll shrug. She's always been there, he says, but nobody photographed her. People laugh when they hear that. They say maybe it's a neighbor's kid, someone sneaking in during shoots. But the pictures span 80 years, generations, and the girl never changes. Same age, same face. A tourist once bought one of the photos as a curiosity. It was a portrait of a young couple in the 1930s, smiling nervously at the camera. On the far left edge, blurred but unmistakable, was the girl, half her face visible, as if she were peeking into the frame. The tourist thought it was a fun conversation piece. He framed it and hung it in his living room back home. Within a week, he started seeing her again. At first, just in the photograph. She seemed a little clearer each time he glanced at it. Then, late at night, he swore he saw her reflection in the window. A small figure, standing behind him. He told friends about it, half joking, but they noticed it too. During a dinner party, someone asked, "Hey, who's the kid in the hallway?" But there were no kids in the house. 3 days later, the tourist disappeared. His apartment door was locked from the inside. His wallet, his phone, everything was still there. But he was gone. The only clue was the photograph, lying face down on the floor. Stories like that spread quickly. More cases came up, people who bought photos from the studio, or even just borrowed them to make copies, started reporting the same thing. They'd see the girl in their homes, sometimes at the corner of the room, sometimes in mirrors, always silent, always watching. And then, one by one, they vanished. The old shop owner doesn't deny it. He just won't sell the photos anymore. They sit in boxes, locked in cabinets. He says he thought about burning them. But every time he tries, the matches won't light. Once he brought in a priest to bless the place, but the man left halfway through, pale and sweating, refusing to step inside again. If you're American, this might sound like an urban legend, the kind of thing kids tell around campfires. But in small towns across Romania, people take these stories seriously. Death and memory feel closer there. Old photos aren't just keepsakes, They're pieces of the soul, traces of who someone was. That's why families keep them on display, why old studios like this one still matter. And maybe that's why the girl lingers. Some say she was a child who died during the war, left unburied, her spirit restless. Others think she was never human at all, just something that attached itself to the lens, hungry for attention. The scariest theory? That she isn't trapped in the photos. She used them as doors. Every print is just another opening, another chance for her to step through into someone's home. My friend swears he saw the collection once. He'd been backpacking through Eastern Europe, and a storm forced him to stay in that town overnight. The innkeeper pointed him toward the studio, saying the owner sometimes rented out a back room. The old man let him in, and while waiting, my friend wandered the shop. He said the photos all blurred together after a while. Stiff portraits, faded paper, blank eyes. But then he noticed her. The girl. Once he saw her in one frame, he couldn't stop seeing her in all of them. He described her face as strangely sharp, even in the oldest, grainiest photos. Like the camera always caught her in perfect focus, no matter how blurry the rest was. He said it felt like she was aware of him staring, like her eyes weren't frozen on film. They were following him. He slept poorly that night, every creak of the old wooden room making him flinch. By morning, he left the town without even saying goodbye. When I asked him later if he thought the girl was real, he hesitated. Then he said, "I don't think she stays in the photos. I think she follows whoever notices her." That answer has stuck with me, because sometimes, even now, when I scroll through old pictures online, forgotten family portraits, antique shop finds, I catch myself checking the edges of the frame, looking for a girl who shouldn't be there. And once or twice, I've thought I saw her. Just a blur. Just the suggestion of a face. But enough to make my stomach twist. So if you ever travel through Romania and find an old photography studio filled with forgotten portraits, don't buy one. Don't even touch them. Because once you bring her picture home, she won't stay inside it. She'll step out, and she'll find you. The shadow that walks beside you. There's a story from Transylvania, that part of Romania everyone thinks of when they hear the word vampire. And yeah, Dracula tourism is big there, but the locals will tell you the real stories are worse. They don't need castles and capes to scare you. The forests alone are enough. This one is about those woods. People say, if you walk through the forest at night, sooner or later, you'll notice it. At first, it's just footsteps. Not your own, not an animal, but a steady sound behind you, matching your rhythm exactly. You stop, it stops. You walk, it walks. The kind of thing that makes the hair on your arms stand up because you know you're not alone. And if you're dumb enough, or unlucky enough, to keep going, it gets worse. A traveler I met, let's call him Eric, told me his version of this. He'd been hiking across Transylvania, cutting through forest trails after dark because he was running late to the next village. He thought he was tough, thought all those "don't walk at night" warnings were just folklore. The trail was narrow, the moonlight barely getting through the branches. The ground was covered in wet leaves that crunched under his boots. That's when he realized there was another crunch, perfectly in sync with his. He stopped. Silence. He took 2 steps forward. Crunch, crunch, right behind him. Okay, he thought. Somebody's following me. Maybe another hiker, maybe a villager heading home. He turned around with his flashlight. Nothing. Just trees and shadows. So he kept walking. But the footsteps didn't go away. There's something about footsteps that are too perfect. If it had been a second late, or off by a beat, he could have convinced himself it was an echo. But this was exact. When his right foot landed, So did the other. When he slowed down, it slowed down. He started playing games with it. Sudden stops, quick steps, dragging his feet. The sound never broke pattern. Always a mirror. And then he saw it. Out of the corner of his eye, just where the shadows between the trees thickened, there was something moving beside him. Not in front, not behind. Beside. A shape, flat and dark, like his own silhouette, had come loose and started walking alongside. The problem was, the moonlight was behind him. His shadow should have been in front. He said the shape didn't have features. Not really. It wasn't taller or shorter than him. Just him, but not him. Step for step, always at the edge of his vision. He tried shining his flashlight toward it, but the beam only lit up branches. The shadow stayed where it was, walking with him. At one point he thought, if I just bolt, maybe I'll lose it. He broke into a sprint. The shadow sprinted too. He could hear the double rhythm. His boots and something else slamming the earth right beside him. His lungs burned. But when he risked a glance, it was still there. Same distance. Same pace. Like it would never tire. Finally he slowed. He couldn't keep it up. And that's when the shadow started to pull ahead. The locals say this is the worst part. When the shadow overtakes you, that's the end. Not death, not in the normal sense. Something stranger. Eric swore he saw it slide in front of him, like smoke curling into his path. The moment it was ahead, he couldn't feel his body the same way. His legs still moved, but numb, like he wasn't controlling them anymore. He staggered out of the forest at dawn and reached the next village. He thought he was safe. But here's the catch. Nobody noticed him. When he tried to talk to people, they didn't react. He waved, shouted, even grabbed a man by the shoulder. The villager just brushed past him like he wasn't there. He went into a tavern, slammed his hands on the counter, begged for help. The bartender poured drinks for someone else, eyes sliding past him as if the stool he sat on was empty. Eric panicked. He pinched his own skin, felt the pain. He could smell the sweat on his shirt, taste the dust in his mouth. He was real, he was there. But to everyone else, nothing. He wandered like that for hours. Eventually exhausted, he stumbled back into the woods, and he never came out. That's how the story goes anyway. Some versions say Eric's still out there, stuck between the trees, walking forever behind his own shadow. Others say he slipped completely out of this world. Like the moment the shadow passed him, he got erased. The villagers just warn. If you hear footsteps at night, don't test it. Don't stop. Don't turn. And whatever you do, don't let it draw even with you. Because once your shadow decides to walk on its own, you don't get to keep both lives. When I first heard this, I thought about how many times I've walked home late at night, convinced someone was behind me. You know that feeling? You speed up, and the sound speeds up too. You stop, and the silence feels worse. Maybe that's all this is. Maybe it's just the oldest fear humans have. The fear of being followed. But maybe not. Because the forests in Transylvania aren't like the woods back home. They're older, denser, darker. Standing there, you really do feel like something ancient is watching. Something that remembers when humans weren't the top of the food chain. And if it wants to walk beside you, it will. And if it passes you, well, then you're just a story too. The house where the lights go out. There's this old story from Romania about a nobleman's mansion. You know the kind. Stone walls, iron gates, the kind of place that sits at the edge of a village and makes kids dare each other to run up to the front door. Around here, they don't call it a haunted house. They just call it the house where the lights go out. During the day, it looks abandoned. Shutters hanging loose, roof tiles missing, vines crawling up the walls. Birds circle the chimneys, and the gardens are nothing but weeds. But when the sun sets, everything changes. From the road, you'll swear the windows are glowing. Candles flicker behind lace curtains. Chandeliers sparkle, like a party's in full swing. If you pass by, you'll hear faint music. Violins, laughter, the clink of glasses. It looks alive again, like it's 1890 and the Count is hosting one of his famous dinners. The thing is, when you step inside, the lights are gone. My buddy Alex, who's half Romanian and grew up visiting family in Transylvania, swears he saw it himself. He said he was walking home from a friend's place one evening and saw the house lit up like Christmas. From the outside, he could see men in tuxedos and women in old-fashioned gowns, gathered around a long banquet table. They were raising their glasses, smiling, talking like they had all the time in the world. He crept closer. Through one window, he swore he saw a man carving roasted meat, steam curling into the candlelight. Through another, a woman twirled across the marble floor in a velvet dress, her jewels catching the light. The whole thing was so vivid. He thought maybe the house had been restored, and someone had moved back in. But when he pushed the front door open, he stepped into blackness. No table, no music, just dust, cobwebs, and a draft that smelled of earth. Here's where it gets worse. Locals say if you only glance through the windows and walk away, you'll be fine. The vision fades once you're back on the road. But if you go inside, and especially if you stay inside, you don't come back out. There are records of this hidden in the county archives. Families who lived nearby wrote letters about relatives who went missing after visiting the mansion. A young soldier on leave in the 1940s, a group of students in the 1970s, even a pair of German tourists in the 90s. Each case the same. Last seen entering the property, never seen again. Sometimes, though, people claim they've spotted them. Not outside, not alive, but sitting at that endless banquet table, dressed in outdated clothes, raising a glass among the guests. One story that's passed around is about a woman named Ilona. She was a school teacher who'd just moved to the village. Practical, no nonsense, not into superstitions. When her colleagues warned her about the mansion, she laughed. One night, walking home, she saw the glow from the windows. Curious, she stepped inside. Days later, when she didn't show up to work, the villagers checked her house. Her bed was untouched, her books stacked neatly. She was simply gone. Weeks later, one man swore he saw her through the mansion window. She was wearing a silk gown, her hair pinned up, smiling at someone across the table. But when he ran to the door to get her, the place was empty. Romanians have their own explanations for this. Some say the noble family who owned the house made a pact, promising their souls in exchange for wealth and beauty. Others believe the house itself is cursed, trapped in a loop, forcing anyone who enters to join the eternal feast. A priest once tried to bless it, sprinkling holy water on the doors and reciting prayers. Witnesses say the candles in the windows dimmed for a moment, but then flared up brighter than ever. The priest left pale and trembling, refusing to return. Here's the detail that creeps me out most. The banquet. People who look through the windows describe the same scene over and over. A long table set with silverware and crystal. Platters of roasted meat, bowls of fruit, golden loaves of bread, wine spilling into polished goblets. The guests never seem hungry. They're always mid-toast, mid-laughter, mid-dance. And yet, the food never changes. It's always the same meal, always the same music, frozen in that exact moment in time. It's like the house is replaying a single night, trapping anyone foolish enough to step inside. Alex told me that when he was younger, he almost went in. He had his hand on the doorknob, heart pounding, when an old woman from the village yanked him back by the collar. She hissed in his ear, "Don't look too long. They'll notice you." When he asked what she meant, she only muttered, "Once they invite you to the table, you don't leave hungry. You don't leave at all." Now, when Americans hear stories like this, they usually ask, why doesn't someone just tear it down? Good question. The thing is, people have tried. Construction crews showed up once in the 1960s, hired to demolish it. The first night, the foreman saw the lights in the windows. The next morning, the crew packed up their trucks and refused to touch the place. They claimed their equipment wouldn't work inside. Engines stalled, drills cracked, hammers snapped. They left the ruins standing. And so, the house waits, night after night, glowing like a lantern in the dark. So, if you ever find yourself wandering through the Romanian countryside and you spot an old mansion with candles glowing inside, don't be tempted. Don't think it's just a historical site with tourists inside, because what you're seeing isn't for you. And if you step through the door, you won't be walking back out into the night. You'll be sitting at the table forever.